Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics. So the two-child cap on universal credit has had a spotlight shone on it for some time. And now, according to the Observer today, at any rate, Starmer has ordered the Treasury to find the money. So what's led up to this policy, and more importantly, what will and won't it do to help reduce poverty? But first, for daily news and commentary, please hit the subscribe button to stay notified. So first of all, why does it now look like the cap is going to be removed? Well, Labour under Starmer had always expressed their intention to remove the cap, which was introduced by the Conservatives in 2017, but that they would only do so when the economic conditions allowed for it. Well, although Starmer is claiming improvements to the economy to justify a change of position over the winter fuel allowance, this is certainly not the case here. The removal of the cap will cost just under £3.5 billion a year by the end of the Parliament. And there are absolutely zero reports of Rachel Reeves having found such a sum down the back of the Treasury sofa. In fact, according to the Observer, the Treasury has been told to just find the money. This, in conjunction with a few other factors, may be opening the way for a fundamental rethink on fiscal policy later this year, but I discussed that a couple of days ago. Labour MPs had been pushing for the removal of this cap for some time, and Keir Starmer now clearly thinks he needs to go ahead with it earlier than planned in order to keep those MPs together. We're told that Starmer had been pushing for this, but it's his Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney, who is rapidly earning a reputation in Labour on the same level as the child snatcher in Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, who was against it. Starmer has a reputation for wanting to get consensus on decisions rather than just coming in and saying, no, we're going to do it this way. Hence why some fairly obvious decisions sometimes take longer than they should. Although given the pressure on polling and splits within the parliamentary party, I actually don't know whether this was another case of getting that consensus or whether the Prime Minister has just gone, look, we're doing this whether you like it or not. I would like to think that maybe he's starting to reflect on the damage that has been caused by steering the party away from more recent lines at the speed they're going. Yes, I appreciate that the fragmentation of the vote these days means Labour cannot conduct strategy in the old ways, but these new ways do not seem to be based on robust research. They are provably failing. Polls don't lie. Well, the good ones don't lie anyway. Ultimately, what looks like pushing this policy to remove the cap more quickly than intended is the outcry from Labour MPs who are basically saying, look, we didn't become Labour MPs to see child poverty increasing. And the forecast at the moment is for child poverty increasing. Child poverty is really one of those metrics where you just take it as read. The proportion will go down while Labour are in power. But politics aside, what will this do? Well, first of all, let's be clear about what this is, because even supporters of removing the two-child cap often demonstrate that they don't actually know what it is. Too often it is described as removing a cap on child benefit, but it's not. There isn't a cap on child benefit. This is a different benefit. This is universal credit, which is a benefit paid to people either out of work or who do work, but that work is so poorly paid they cannot possibly cope on their salary alone. The payment based on children is not the same as child benefit, which is universal, although they do take it off you again if you earn above a certain amount. This is an additional payment to help with the cost of children, specifically for families on incredibly low incomes. But in 2017, it was capped at 2 children. Now, although it didn't apply retrospectively. So children born before the policy came online would still get the payments. So removing the cap will benefit families on ridiculously low incomes who have at least 3 children, and at least one of those 3 children was born after April 2017. It does nothing to alleviate child poverty for any family with no more than 2 children or families with more children where the youngest was born before April 2017. So, given that it won't help in the slightest some children in poverty, why is such a mighty fuss made about this one policy above all others that might help? Well, the reason is that there is no single policy which will actually ease child poverty across the board. You actually need to do quite a lot of things across multiple government departments, and all of it takes money, in order to really abolish child poverty or even get close to doing so. But it has been shown by research that removing the two-child cap on universal credit is the single best way to reduce child poverty. In other words, if the government had a pot of money to use to tackle child poverty, let's say £3.4 billion a year, then according to researchers, this will do more to alleviate child poverty than anything else you can do with that same amount of money. And although more will need to be done, if you're serious about making a start on the problem, it does make sense to begin with what researchers seem to agree is the most efficient way of spending money to deal with the problem first, hence why so many Labour MPs have pushed for this policy. The Institute for Fiscal Studies produced a good explainer on the impacts of the policy about a year ago. Should come as no surprise that the cap hits people pretty much in inverse proportion to their wealth, which means removing the cap will be a boost to the poorest children. And this is where the economic arguments need to be made. So many people talk about the policy from a human angle, which is important, but it's not compelling to everyone. I tend to try and avoid arguments that can fall foul of the, well, I'm all right, Jack, I don't care hurdle, and focus on ones which, benefit everyone. So the economic arguments. First, this is money that will be spent in local communities. Not a single penny of it will gather dust in a savings account, which does nothing or disappear offshore. It will all get spent, and it will all get spent boosting jobs in Britain. Also, almost all of it, if not actually all of it, ends up going back to the Treasury anyway. Some of it goes back in VAT, some in taxes on profits from the businesses it's spent in. In fact, the IFS points to research which suggests that the policy could actually end up costing nothing at all because the economic benefits pay for the cost of removing the cap. Although they do note that the research cannot be certain, there's a lot of uncertainty about it, but it is still the case, although it is described as costing about £3.4 billion a year by 2028, that will not actually be the cost, because a chunk of that will definitely end up going back to the Treasury the following year. The net cost is certainly going to be lower. We just don't know how much lower until the policy is up and running. Second, if we're going to boost the skills of our domestic workforce in order to meet the demands of a lower immigration economy, without seeing that economy just shrink, which I have my doubts about, then we're going to need kids from poor backgrounds to access those career paths. Kids from wealthier backgrounds are already having easy access to education. It's kids from poorer backgrounds that need that skills training. Whether at university, whether through apprenticeships, it doesn't matter. They need advanced skills. Now, it's not easy to concentrate at school when you're malnourished, and it is not easy to be motivated to work hard in school when the only life you know all around you is poverty, no matter how hard you work. It would actually be better if we thought of the financial impact of this policy as being an investment rather than a cost. See, child poverty is a huge driver of child underachievement, and this is a lost opportunity for a future which Labour want to see pursuing high-tech development. Well, if you want to see the engineers and scientists of the future develop in the UK, they need to be fed. And I also think Labour MPs might do better in promoting progress like this in economic terms, which benefits everyone alongside the arguments which tend to cause the arguments. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. If you've enjoyed the video, please click the like button and subscribe for further content. If you'd like to support the channel further, you can click the join button for memberships. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.